Jaxon Smith-Njigba just had a career game in week 9. We'll tell you if you should buy the hype on this episode of the Locked On Dynasty Football Podcast.
You are Locked On Dynasty Football, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day. Here are your hosts, Marcus Mosher and Kate Madjuk.
Welcome back to the Locked On Dynasty Football Podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen of the day. This episode is brought to you by Prize Picks. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL and use promo code LockedOnNFL to win $50 instantly when you play $5. Welcome back. I am your host, Marcus Mosher. You can follow me on Twitter at Marcus_Mosher. Joining me today, as always, is Kate Madjuk. You can follow her on Twitter at Kate Madjuk. And it's a Wednesday show, so of course, Matt Williamson is here. You can follow him on Twitter at WilliamsonNFL. On today's show, we're going to take a look at 3 players who are coming off some pretty big games and tell you if you should be buying the hype in your dynasty leagues. Matt, let's start with Jaxon Smith-Njigba, who went for 180 yards and 2 touchdowns against the Rams in week 9. We've been fans of him for a while, but this has not been the easiest season for us fans here. Are you starting to buy the hype now after a career game?
It hasn't been the easiest career, going back to last year. I mean, last year was rough, although you could sort of see that coming. Kate, I can't speak for you, but I do know Marcus and I have been very high on him. I think you were as well. Yeah. And I really like the player. Now, I don't think this is the week to go buy him. This is probably his best game of the season and best game for a while. It's a monster blow-up performance without Metcalf in the lineup. But I do think he's coming into his own. I still like the prospect as much as I did coming out of Ohio State, which is high praise. And what I keep coming back to with this passing game is, besides Charles Cross, the left tackle, this protection is terrible. I mean, their tight ends and running backs don't really help all that well. 4 of the 5 starters are problematic on the offensive line. And where I'm going with this is I think he's the quick hitter underneath, move the chains, 15 yards and in guy for Seattle. So I think his volume should remain strong, but this game is going to be a little bit of an outlier.
Kate, what do you think?
Yeah, definitely think this game is an outlier, but it's not like this was a prospect that we didn't have high expectations for, right? Didn't meet them as a rookie, but coming out of OSU, we knew what kind of refined prospect he could be. We knew there was a lot left to unlock. Like if they're going to move him around the formation, get him in the slot, get him on outside, like there's so much there, right? So like, he has the draft capital. He had the talent coming out of OSU. I'm absolutely buying the hype, though I agree with Matt. This isn't the week to buy him. I think once we get DK Metcalf back in the mix, that's probably going to maybe open a little bit of a wider window. But I think of him as more of a long-term play, not necessarily a league-winning asset for 2024.
And Matt, this is what I struggle with because his best game of his career came with DK Metcalf out of the lineup. And we expect DK Metcalf to be back on the field sooner rather than later. And the Seahawks, it sounds like, had opportunities to trade DK Metcalf at the trade deadline. Adam Schefter reports that they just wanted to turn down all offers. He was not on the table at all, which tells me that they view DK Metcalf as a long-term answer at wide receiver in Seattle. So if JSN is always going to be playing with Metcalf, I do wonder what the upside is here.
Yes, but I would think Lockett won't be in the equation much longer.
Hopefully.
You know what I mean? I mean, maybe he hangs around for another year, but I think his role keeps diminishing. I see what you're saying. I think that considering the tight end situation and the running backs that don't demand targets, I think the pie is big enough for the two of them to thrive. But I think he's going to be the 2 behind Metcalf for the foreseeable future, though. And the protection's the thing that worries me. I mean, that's not going to change this season. I think that needs to help the offense as a whole, as they need to invest in this offensive line in the offseason.
I also would say, doesn't it make sense long term for the Seahawks offense to use Metcalf as like to use JSN as the high volume option in this passing attack? Like, let him be the guy that moves the chains and gets the 10 targets, 9 catches for 90 yards every week, and let Metcalf be like the hammer that gets the 5 targets, but they're all 35 yards down the field. I feel like that's probably the best way for this offense to go, but we really haven't seen that dynamic play out yet.
True. But as you were saying that, I was trying to think of wide receiver pairings to along those lines. And I think a good one is a couple of years ago, Keenan Allen and Mike Williams. Yeah, that could be new Steeler, by the way, Kate. I don't know if you noticed that, but I had to throw his name in. On their best days, though. I mean, when Williams was healthy and thriving, and Allen's a borderline Hall of Fame type guy, I could see that usage being similar, and that would be fine.
Kate, I want to ask you about what you'd be willing to give up for JSN right now, because one of the most common trades we've seen in dynasty leagues over the last 3 or 4 days has been JSN straight up for a 2025 first round pick. Is that something that you would entertain if you want to go out and buy JSN right now?
I would. And again, it just comes down to my belief in JSN, the player. I think what we saw from him this past week is much closer to the potential that could be realized. I think the way that you mentioned the usage and the potential there for him to be more of the chain mover, the volume guy, the just reliable man coming out of the slot that you can just, he's going to come down with that catch to move the chains. Like I love that role for him. And that does open up so much big play potential down the field. I think the dynamic there could be something really special. I don't think that Tyler Lockett is going to be long for this offense. Like, we've already seen the decline in efficiency. I'm absolutely okay paying that.
I actually traded him like 1 week ago, which probably wasn't the best timing on my part, but my team is utterly loaded. Like, he would be my wide receiver 10, and I was short on running backs. So I traded Adonai Mitchell and JSN to a total rebuild team, and I got back Amari Cooper, who she just wanted to get rid of. I'm like, I'll use them, but whatever. I got Tracy, who was my target. That's how I opened talks. I wanted the running back, and I got a second-round pick. Now, JSN stock has grown since then. I mean, that was 1 week ago.
But so is Tyrone Tracy's. I think
that was my goal. Yeah, I needed it back.
You're right. Tyrone Tracy, just really quickly, let's touch on him. We've got a couple of minutes here. I mean, he's just so clearly become the lead guy here, and he suffered a concussion against Pittsburgh on Monday night. Still ended up playing last Sunday. What do you think about Tyrone Tracy long-term here?
Oh, I'm a fan. And I loved him coming out of school. I thought there was a lot of ability there, a lot of untapped potential as a pure running back. I think we'll see his wide receiver background come out more and more the more he plays in terms of volume of receptions. And it's not showing up now. But I do think the Giants O-line is in pretty good shape, top to bottom. I mean, I know it doesn't sound like much, but when they go out and invest in Runyon and Illuminor, both those guys are 2 starters. And Andrew Thomas coming back. Like, I think this offense is in pretty good shape if you can find a quarterback. Like, I wouldn't mind being the Giants GM. I've been saying that.
Yeah,
what I mean?
I mean, your success is going to depend on whether you find a quarterback, which is the hardest thing to do. But you do have some building blocks there. Kate, what are your thoughts on Tyrone Tracy?
Yeah, I'm absolutely buying. I think, most metrics pointed to him being a good running back with a lot of potential, changing positions. The initial data, very encouraging. And now he's his second season playing the running back position, and the tape matches the efficiency, like all things combined points to a really good running back. And what makes it all the more impressive for me is that this has been an offense that has had its struggles. So to see that kind of come to fruition here, I think is probably closer to the real deal. Maybe he would have had higher draft capital if he had some more time playing that position in college, and he would have been drafted a little bit higher. I think the Giants probably got themselves a bargain. And I think the reason they got themselves a bargain is much more due to the circumstance of his newness to the position than, a lack of evaluated upside, if that makes sense.
All right, let's talk about Cedric Tillman, who has now put together 3 straight very impressive performances. Should you be buying him in your dynasty leagues? We will get to that next. This episode is brought to you by Ultimate Pro Football GM. Hey, Dynasty fans, remember our great partner, Ultimate Pro Football GM? Well, they're back and they've added an amazing new game mode that I need to tell you about. The game has you set up in the shoes of a football franchise GM, like the Giants GM that we were just talking about. Now you can go be a head coach in career mode. So on top of getting to build your dynasty by drafting players, signing free agents, and hiring coaching staffs, now you get to call offensive plays during the game as well. Additionally, you're going to be able to dig into new tools that you can work with, such as individual training camps and upgrade negotiating systems. So this fun and realistic game just got a whole lot better. If you already have it installed, but make sure you do an update so you can get all these new features. If you haven't downloaded it yet, go download it now. It is a must-have for all football fans. I love it, and I know you will as well. Ultimate Pro Football GM is completely free, has no ads. It is 100% playable offline so that you can play on the go as you want and when you want to. And here is a special offer for Locked On fans. Use the promo code LOCKEDONNFL, all caps, inside the game store to receive a free boost to your franchise. Make sure to get it, as this perk will help you jumpstart your play and give you the advantage that you want in creating your dynasty. To download the game, just visit ultimate-gm.com, ultimate-gm.com, or look it up in the app stores. Ultimate Football Pro GM. Start your dynasty today. This episode is brought to you by Prize Picks. Prize Picks is the best place to get real money sports action. With over 10 million members and billions of dollars in award winnings, Prize Picks has made daily fantasy sports accessible to all. You just pick more or less than at least 2 players for a shot to win up to 100 times your cash. Run your game all season long on Prize Picks. Prize Picks is the best way to get action on sports in most states, including California, Florida, Georgia, and Texas. Prize Picks is also the only real money daily fantasy sports platform with an injury insurance policy, so your lineups stay in play even if one of your players gets injured. If your player leaves in the first half and doesn't return, Prize Picks keeps your lineup alive. Sign up today and get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. Go to prizepicks.com or download the app today and use promo code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. That is prizepicks.com. Download the app today. Use promo code LOCKEDONNFL. Prize Picks, run your game. Welcome back to the Locked On Dynasty Football Podcast. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen of the day. We're talking about 3 players that are performing really well over the last couple of weeks and telling you if you should be buying the hype. Now, let's get to Browns wide receiver Cedric Tillman, who over the last 3 games, 8 for 81, 7 for 99 and 2 touchdowns, 6 for 75 and a touchdown since they've traded Amari Cooper. Before we talk about the value and the hype, can you just kind of give us a recap of what you thought about Cedric Tillman as a prospect coming into the NFL?
Yeah, I like him quite a bit, and I think I'm in 7 dynasty leagues and own him in 5. So I've been kind of sitting on them. They were all rookie draft acquisitions, so I was a big fan coming out. I thought he was a lot more pro ready, what the NFL is looking for in that weird Tennessee offense than his buddy Hyatt, who was just kind of running sprints out there. I thought Tillman was a much more refined route runner, more physical. And I'm not knocking Hyatt. I mean, he's fine too. But I think the Browns agreed, moved Cooper to make space for Tillman. Now he's getting peppered with targets, and deservedly so. But I will say, big picture, this is more of an NFL thing than a dynasty thing, but I do think they overlap a lot. I mentioned about I wouldn't mind being the Giants GM. Well, I would hate being the Saints, Panthers, or Browns GM, and Vegas might not be far off. Like, I think those organizations are destined for doom for a long time, and makes me hesitant to invest in any piece of those teams.
So would you be willing to buy Cedric Tillman even more if you don't have him in your dynasty leagues right now? Because he has produced. What do you think about the long-term outlook of the Browns wide receiver core?
I think he's going to be the one entering next year. Let's just leave it at that. You know what I mean? Like, I think that Judy's under contract. Maybe Elijah Moore gets a little bit rejuvenated. There was a time I was really high on him too.
I think Elijah Moore's a free agent though.
Oh, is he? Okay, I wasn't sure about that. That makes sense.
Because he was in the 2021 draft, I believe. So, I mean, they'll probably bring him back at a cheap price. But you look at this wide receiver room. There's a good chance that Tillman's just the guy moving forward.
That's what I'm thinking. Like, in the state of this team, can they use a first-round pick on a wideout? Can they go get T. Higgins or somebody that's better? Probably not. You know, and who wants to go there?
And there's a chance that they're using that first-round pick on a quarterback as well. So
absolutely.
Kate, what were your thoughts on Tillman as a prospect? And then are you buying the hype?
Definitely agree with Matt. I thought his skill set translated a lot better to the NFL. I thought he was the much better wide receiver. We've talked kind of endlessly, in the offseason program when we're doing our rookie evaluations, how hard it is to project players from the Tennessee offense here to the actual NFL, because again, they're just kind of running wide open. What does that look like on an NFL football field where you're actually having to dissect coverages? You're like, there's a lot going on. Jalen Hyatt, phenomenal athlete, fast, does all of those good things, but I've maintained that I thought Cedric Tillman would have won the Blackknoff if it wasn't for the fact that he just was injured, right? Like, that paved the way for Hyatt to be as dominant as he was. I think he probably would have seen a higher draft capital investment if he had been healthy and hadn't, had that injury that ended his season prematurely. But I like him. He's got the size. I think the skill set's real. My only question is, do I want to invest in the Browns offense? And that's my biggest point of contention. Like, is he going to be the guy long term? I don't know. Because I don't know that they know what anything is long term there in the Browns organization. I think the only player that they probably want to put like a franchise sort of cornerstone tag on right now is Myles Garrett. And even he, I'm sure if you called for the right price, the Browns would probably consider it in the state that they're in. Obviously, trade deadline has passed, but I just think there are so many moving parts that I think it's going to be a little bit easy for Cedric Tillman to get lost in the mix here, especially if they don't have an answer at quarterback. It doesn't look like they are going to have an answer anytime soon. I just actually traded away Cedric Tillman. I'm in a rebuild. I need some draft capital. I traded him to a win now team for what's projected to be a middle second round pick in the 2025 draft and a fourth. And I felt really good about that.
So, Marcus, along those lines, I mentioned I own him in a high percentage of my leagues. Whether I'm totally junk and rebuilding or he's buried on my death chart, I'm loaded. Last week, I think I put out on the block and I just checked his box just so everyone saw him. You know what I mean? Just to attract flies, see what I got. And nobody bit, surprisingly. I thought people would be offering me stuff left and right, but I'm not saying he's a sell, but I wanted to see what it would attract.
And do you think that second and a fourth round pick sounds about right?
I wouldn't have moved them for that. Sorry.
Really? Would it take a first round pick right now?
I think so. A generic first.
All right. So this is great. We've got some trades over the last 2 days that I think are really noteworthy with Cedric Tillman. This first one's just funny because we talked about it. Cedric Tillman in a 2025 first round pick for JSN. Matt, where are you on that one?
I think I want the Tillman side there.
Kate.
Probably depends on how early the first round pick is. If it's like mid to late, I'll take JSN. If not, if it's an early first, I'll take the package.
Okay.
Kate, I'm more along the lines of JSN or Tillman and my third this year for a future first. So I don't think you're far off with a 2 and a 4, but the
I
4 doesn't do
that's
anything for me.
fair. And to be fair, that probably would have been my initial offer, or my initial proposal there if this manager had a first round pick, but he didn't. So,
Yeah.
We have seen from Dynasty League football several trades this week, including Cedric Tillman for a 2025, 2026 first round pick straight up. So I think that's interesting. One differing position. Cedric Tillman straight up for Chase Brown, I think, is a very interesting trade. Matt, what are your thoughts on that one?
I almost stole what I was about to say. I was about to say, would you guys do Tillman for Tracy straight up?
Yeah, I would take Tracy.
Do you have Tracy over Brown? I think I do. They're in the same ballpark.
I think I have Brown over Tracy.
So I guess I take the running back in all those scenarios.
Just because I think it's a lot easier to find a Cedric Tillman at wide receiver. Where I think for Chase Brown and Tyrone Tracy, those guys are every week RB2s for at least the rest of this season. And with those guys both being young players, Tracy being drafted this year, Brown being drafted last year, I don't see why their role would change dramatically in 2025. Do you?
And considering both those team and their offseason needs, I don't think they're going to be using top 3 round pick on a running back.
No, I would be very, very surprising.
Although other fish to fry.
This is a very good running back class, so maybe we see teams draft running backs earlier than we expect. But I tend to agree with you. Let's talk about a quarterback, Kyler Murray, somebody that we've liked for a long time here on the Locked On Dynasty Football Podcast. Are you buying Kyler Murray after a really good start to the 2024 season? We will get to that next. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. There's nothing better than just sitting back, watching a game, pulling up your phone, looking at the odds. You can bet on the results of a single drive. You can bet on updated lines as the game is going on. So if you get a hunch in the middle of the game, like, hey, this team is down by 7, I think they're going to win outright, it's a perfect time to go place a bet on the money line. You could also check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You're going to get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Welcome back to the Locked On Dynasty Football Podcast. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen of the day. For your second listen, go find the new Locked On NFL Now show with 2 shows every single day. First, the Madman Tyler Rowland kicks you off in the morning with a double shot of NFL espresso. Then stop by the barbershop with Tony Wiggins for some real NFL talk. Find Locked On NFL on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcasts. All right, Matt, let's talk about Kyler Murray, who is off to another fantastic start this year. He's all the way up to QB 8 in Dynasty leagues. Would you be willing to pay that price right now?
Yes, he was probably my #1 redraft target coming into the year. I thought he was going way too late in a lot of those mocks and things like that, and underdog. And frankly, I often bring on the show just state of the organization he's in. Like when the Cardinals made their coaching hire, before last season, I kind of felt like it was bottom of the barrel. They were settling. Nobody wanted to go there. We were talking about Caleb Williams is guaranteed to be a Cardinal with the first overall pick. Like that was the state of the Cardinals when this coaching staff took over. And I couldn't be more impressed with both sides of the ball, what they've gotten out of these rosters.
They're well coached.
They're really well coached. The running game's really hard to play against. The defense doesn't have any players, but they make plays and they get the most out of their players across the board on both sides of the ball. And I think that reflects in the quarterback. And maybe Murray hasn't lit it up for fantasy, but he looks so much better than he did really under any staff, under the previous staff. And I think we need to remember, too, that even when last year started, we didn't even think he was going to play a snap because of his injury. He probably came back earlier than he should. So, I mean, that was a major injury, and I think he's become a very good football player.
Kate, what do you think?
Yeah, I think definitely when you look at sort of the tumultuous nature of the finishes this year, he's had 3 top 5 finishes, including a finish as the number 1 overall quarterback back in week 2. But he's had some like a couple of stinkers, a few finishes outside of the top 15, including what was the worst game from a fantasy perspective, his lowest scoring outing in a game where he had played a full more than 50% of the offensive snaps. Like it was bad, but I do think generally speaking, when you're looking at the player, the situation, it's really hard to deny the upside of him as both a passer and a runner, and circumstantially what they might be able to do. And I don't know, like I'm looking at some of the names that are being drafted around him, like CJ Stroud. CJ Stroud, yes, obviously has all the upside as a passer, but like when we're looking at value at the quarterback position in fantasy football, like he does not have that same level of rushing upside. Patrick Mahomes, like he finally just cracked the top 10 for the first time in how long last week? Like it's hard to compete with the guy that can use his legs, but I think we've kind of seen from him this year that he doesn't also just have to rely on those legs, which is encouraging, I think, just from a long-term perspective.
2 things, Matt, I wanted to mention really quickly on Kyler. Number 1, when you're buying a quarterback like Kyler, you're also buying into the rest of the offense, right? Because you're going to need weapons in order for that quarterback to produce. So if I'm buying Kyler, I'm also at the same time kind of buying Marvin Harrison Jr. and Trey McBride and the young Michael Wilson and Greg Dortch. Like I like the direction that this offense is headed. But the thing that really makes me more confident to buy Kyler is just by listening to some of the interviews and watching some of these clips on Twitter. It just seems like he's matured. And this is what happens when you get a quarterback that's been in
This
the
is what
league.
happens when you unplug Call of Duty, right?
Right.
I mean, yeah, it's a good advice
Put
for
it
me.
in the contract,
Yeah, I need to stop playing so much. Yeah, he seems more mature, which is exactly what you want to see from him. And to be honest, in some ways, I wonder if the injury like helped him long term. Kind of step back and realize like, hey, this can be taken from me in a moment, right? He's being drafted right now as QB8. I'm comfortable drafting him as high as QB5, QB6 in dynasty leagues right now.
Me too. And I don't know Kyler Murray. I'm not here to slander him, but multiple people have told me that he was hard to be around early in his career. He was entitled. He didn't work particularly hard. And I'm not defending him, but it's come really easy for him. Like he's one of the best high school players ever. And
best athletes ever.
I would say he was a first round pick in baseball. Like this stuff's easy. Why would I work extra hard if I am better than everybody on the field? You know what I mean? And that's not uncommon for rare guys like him. And now he's realizing I need to do more.
Yeah. And think back to when we were 22, 23 years old. I think even the difference between 22 and 27 is pretty massive, right? Yeah. And I think you see that across the NFL. Guys are just completely different at age 27 than they are at 22. So I'm all in on Kyler, and it sounds like you guys are as well. Yeah. All right, that is it for today's show. We want to thank you for making Locked On Dynasty Football your first listen every single day. Check out the channel on YouTube. Download the podcast wherever you get your podcasts. We are free and available on all platforms. Follow Matt on Twitter at WilliamsonNFL. You can follow Kate at Kate Majuk. I'm at Marcus_Mosher, and we will see you right back here tomorrow.